and the remainder hessian or burlap. And with the cool wind that developed as the meeting progressed, the atmosphere became drafting and unsettling. We stood as he was carried in his chair to the platform, and we sat as he gestured for us to do so. There was a pause with beloved Baba looking at us, and in that timeless moment we were caught and riveted anew in the wondrous beauty, strength and purpose of his face. In retrospect, it felt as though this was the defining moment of his second visit to this part of the world. He had endured the exhausting journey to the southern hemisphere with a body broken in health after 2 car accidents, and by already 38 years of constant crucifixion in absorbing some of the world's karma. Yet, in his compassion and love, he had come for this handful of souls and for Australia. Now, that is a more literary way of putting it. You can see that I did not cover in detail the certain things that happened. Yeah, I mean, in other words, he wasn't carried here. He came, and then the braces that were necessary to carry the chair, the long poles that were attached, were taken off, and then the chair was brought here, and Baba sat. I spoke about how he was introduced to each one again, or the new ones especially, and how he asked who had helped and contributed in the building. But at the same time, it is also true that his arrival, here, and we were all here before him, that was the defining moment. It was. And as I've said further, he came to Australia twice to give his love. And on this visit, he created the second place that would provide a never-ending, especially potent source of that love for the people of this land. As a land and as a people, we would awaken spiritually, a country located in the East, and yet as a people of the West. And thus perhaps in his plan for the next 700 years, a significant link between East and West. But more than that, to me, of course, it's become obvious now, but it was so clear in the 40s and 50s that the center of the world, of this point in creation, this world of ours, was centered in the Pacific, no longer the Atlantic. The energy had flowed from Europe to America, and had also, and one has seen it more and more over the years, has also awakened in the East, China, India, and Australia, and other countries, and that here now, the Pacific would be the centre, the active centre of the world in the years to come. This is what this was to us was apparent over the years, and has become more apparent now in general. And it's so interesting to me that Baba came endured that long, arduous flight from America? Why come to Australia? There were perhaps at that time, I don't know, perhaps 12 million people total in the country. There were a group of 50 people, some of whom were children. There weren't even adults, all adults. And yet he came. Not only endured to come to Australia, but then had to endure a further flight from Sydney to Brisbane, and then a 2.5-hour drive, as it was in those days, on poor roads to come here. And in winter time, under, to be frank, rather primitive conditions. His house, this meeting hall that I've described, and this was the setting for God himself to be here. It does boggle the mind, you could say.
So let's talk about what happened when we were here.
All right. So, beloved Barbers, given through Erich, then gave human dimension to that timeless moment. I am the ocean of love. Drink deep at that fountain. Love has no limit, but mind is in the way, and mind cannot be annihilated by mind. Only by loving me as I ought to be loved can the mind be destroyed. If you love me with all your heart, you will be made free eternally. There can be no compromise. One cannot love the world and love God. The man of the world has to compromise, but to have obedience to Baba, one cannot compromise with the ways of the world. Love me and obey me, and you will find me. I am the Ancient One, the one residing in every heart. Therefore, love others, make others happy, serve others, even at discomfort to yourself. This is to love me. Then Baba called for the repentance prayer to be read by one of the men. That actually was John Bruford. And when it was finished, he said that in his divine authority, he forgave all our sins up to that moment. The hours that Baba spent with us in this meeting hall were the most consistently serious period of his entire visit. His love enveloped us, penetrating deep within our hearts and challenging us in the sincerity of our declared love for him. Far from here seemed the sunny, light hours of his stay 2 years earlier in Mayor House, Sydney. Far were those personal moments of human intimacy experienced by many in Sydney and Melbourne. Now was the confronting challenge of our next step towards the spiritual path. Did we step forward with him, or did we linger to wait another day? As he said during those hours, as Jesus I said, leave all and follow me. And now I say, hold fast to my Dharman. I've been saying the same thing in different words down the ages. Be honest with yourself in your love for me. Love and obey me. But if you cannot love and obey me, then just obey me, and my Dharman cannot fall from your grasp. The culminating point of that most intense time appeared to be when a teenage boy, deeply troubled over the question of absolute obedience to Baba, again had tears in his eyes. Barbara gestured to him with a...
So, excuse me, so did Baba ask you about obedience? I mean, so he...
Barbara said to obey him.
I know, but was he asking the whole crowd?
Yes.
To be willing to obey?
Yes.
Could you just talk about that?
Yes, I will. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Barbara gestured to him with the most loving expression. Barbara loves you. You must not be sad. As tears still fell, Barbara added, when you cry, see, Barbara cries too, as he pointed to the rain that was then gently falling. In that moment, surely beloved Barbara was expressing his compassion for all in Australia and our difficulty with absolute obedience to his wishes. Now I think again upon that day, a glorious day when God-man was with us and reminded us to pray that we all live in deed and word and thought in accordance with his will. Yes, but what happened was that Barbara emphasized love and obedience, saying, don't say that you love me unless you're prepared to obey me. It has no meaning unless...
Was this like a talk that he gave after greeting everyone?
Yes. Yeah, this was part of the meeting. That's what he emphasized, and that's what he had specified before arriving, that we had to be prepared.
Yes.
To love and obey.
Right. So everyone was supposed to be prepared for that.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And so then he asked whether we were all prepared to obey.
Much more serious than the 56.
Absolutely. There was no question. That's what I want to convey, how it was a different atmosphere entirely. As I've said, that the 56th visit was somehow sunlit and joyous and so natural and human. God-loving and human-loving. But here, yes, there's no question. He, of course, he conveyed his love, and we felt it. More intensely in a way because of the suffering that was also visible with Barbara. Yeah, and I'll talk about that another time in Barbara arriving and my meetings with him. But here in this meeting, he emphasized the importance of, was everyone prepared to do as he asked, love and obey. And three stood up, and that was one man and the two sons of Stan and Clarice Adams. And Barbara gestured to Clarice.
These people stood up because they couldn't?
They could not, I'm sorry. They stood up saying that they were not able to obey. And it was tense. The atmosphere was tense because Barbara had said to one, would he cut his wife's throat if he was ordered? And it was,
Who was
and
that? Who did he say that?
that was to Robert Rouse.
Wow.
And I'm sorry, I'm not clear, but I do know that there was definitely hesitation on Robert's part.
He wasn't sure about that.
Yes. Anyway, the important thing that I'm trying to convey was the atmosphere really was incredible.
Tense.
To use a hackneyed phrase, you could cut the atmosphere with a knife.
Yes.
It was very tense. And yet, at the same time, absolutely riveting. And Baba was very much God-man, saying, look, this is why I'm here on earth. Yeah. Anyway, so he questioned, Clarice, did you explain to your two boys? And so Baba then, and Clara said yes, and so Baba then said, all right, we'll break off, and you can explain again to the boys. Talk to them. So we all dispersed. Now, all I know is that we went out. And I don't know how long it was. I don't remember. Anyway, then we all came back in, and Baba said, had he talked? And Clara said yes, that she had spoken to them. The man who was a friend, an artist friend of Stan and Clarice, said that Baba spoke about him having to leave, but then forgave him, and it was unresolved. It wasn't, from memory, the man did not, Laurie Adolphus, that's right. Mm-hmm. He did not say yes, he would obey, and Baba didn't insist.
Yes, yeah.
And it was at that point when the young one, whose name I can't remember, Colin, was still weeping. And that was when Baba said, hey, see, when you weep, Baba weeps. And the rain was falling. It just fell at that point. It was a very lovely moment. Very lovely, and it somehow broke the atmosphere. Yeah. The rather tense atmosphere at that time.
Yes.
So that was the completion of the period here. Jai Baba. Jai Baba. A couple of things that I should mention apropos of earlier recordings. The property of Avatar's abode was bought, I've been told, by a family called Willisthorpe. And I also thought of certain additional names who helped considerably in the preparation for Baba's visit. May Lundquist, Diana Snow, and I think I've mentioned the Brufords, John and Joan, Bernard and Joanna, Marge Donaldson. The periods varied, Robert Rouse, but certainly they all contributed, and it was, as some of them recall, the ones that remain recall, it was indeed a wonderful time of preparation, like the preparation for Baba's first visit in 1956, that centred around the Beacon Hill house. Now it's centred on this property, and it was indeed a wonderful time. So that
the preparation time was probably about 3 months.
It was only 3 months.
But some people could only say come.
Oh yes, the periods varied, definitely. Some were only a couple of weeks before. Others perhaps a month or a bit more. But the basic team was really essentially small. Francis, Lorna Rouse cooking, Roy Bolsh, Reg Paffel, Jack Painter, and myself. There was 2 periods. I think I've mentioned this already. The periods that I was there, but I certainly wasn't as permanent as that small group, core group. So the day came. I can remember clearly the Monday, the 2nd of June. It was a sunny day again, fresh in the morning and evening again. Definitely, no doubt about it. But sunny during the day, and I could remember feverish last-minute preparations, little things being done, right up to the point where I departed with John Bruford in the 2 cars that we took to Brisbane to collect beloved Barbara, and the 4 men, Munderley and Francis, who had already gone down to meet Barbara at Sydney Airport and escorted him back on the domestic flight to Brisbane Airport. One other thing I should mention, that I was given the task of, finding accommodation for Barbara for the night of the 2nd and again for the night of the 6th, when he returned from Avatar's abode to Brisbane and then to Sydney. And that's a whole nother story.
Well, do you want to tell it? It's a good story.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll tell it everything that I can remember. But going back to the 2nd, I earlier in the period I had searched around Brisbane for suitable accommodation for Barbara. At that time, Brisbane was, you could say, perhaps it was an overgrown country city. It was very basic. It did not have the accommodation of the standard of Sydney and Melbourne, which was much more international. Brisbane wasn't. It had very basic hotel accommodation, what we call hotel, which means that there were bars, lounges where people drank.
Pubs underneath.
Pubs, yeah, and some accommodation, very basic, with a bathroom down the passageway, that sort of thing. Not at all of the standard, as I said, international standard of Sydney and Melbourne. But then I found what I thought was the best of those hotels, and it was a very gracious looking old building, probably at least 100 years old. No, wouldn't have been at that time.
What was it?
Brisbane, yes, it could have been 100 years old. But it had a two-story, a flight of stairs to the front doors, a balcony around the upper floor of metal lattice work, very attractive.
The Bellevue.
It was called the Bellevue Hotel, and alongside, to the side of the hotel, was an area, as it were, a garden area that had tables and chairs where people with their drinks could sit, and situated in that area, that garden area, was a small cottage with one bedroom and a little lounge and bathroom, and I thought, oh, this is ideal. I thought would be very satisfactory for Baba. He would not have to climb the stairs to the second floor. It was on almost ground level. There was a small flight of stairs to that level, but I felt that it was as good as we possibly could find. Well, beloved Baba was so kind. He reported to me that it was satisfactory but not ideal. And it was not ideal as I had hoped, because I didn't realize that near the cottage, in that area, was a trapdoor which opened and to a ramp down which barrels of beer in the night were rolled down for the underground cellar. Poor Baba.
About 2 in the morning.
About 2 o'clock in the morning, the early hours of the morning, these barrels were rolled down. So but he was kind to say that it was satisfactory even if it wasn't ideal. I was somewhat comforted. So John Bruford and I drove the 2 cars down, and we went to the hotel first of all, confirmed the bookings, and settled into our own rooms, and then went to the airport, arriving in the early evening, probably, I would think probably 7 p.m. About that time. It was certainly dark. And we parked the cars alongside a big swing gate, and opening onto the tarmac, and over that gate was an overhead lamp, shaded so that it cast a light